Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is the second day in my Christmas in July series, and I want to share this fun flat shaker card with you. So let's jump right in. So I'm going to create my background first, and for that I did use a piece of watercolor cardstock, and then I'm going to use some of my distress sprays. I have 3 different colors here. I have an Oxide ink, which was Salvaged Patina. And then I have 2 of the Mica sprays. I'm not sure if you can still get them or if they're coming back out this year, but it was Merry Mint and Winterberry. And the Winterberry is more of a reddy pink color, and of course mint is the green color. This is kind of a more traditionally colored card than I tend to do. I do generally lean towards more non-traditional colors, but anything I do can always be changed to be whatever colors you prefer. But for this one, I kind of did go red, green, and blue, just for a little bit of something a little different than what I tend to do, because I do end up going kind of towards the more non-traditional Christmas colors. So you saw me spray them on the background there, and I did add some water to my my cardstock first, just because I wanted a little bit of movement, though they do kind of stay in their general areas that I'm spraying them on. There's no real right or wrong way to do this, but you have to be aware that if you're not careful, red and green, because they're complementary colors, make brown. So I don't want too much movement, but I do want enough movement that they kind of don't just end up as like bullseyes of color. So it's kind of what I was aiming for. And honestly, you're going to cover this up and it's going to be a shaker card. So it's not a huge deal if there is a little bit of color mixing that you don't love, because we are going to cover it up. So you wouldn't really be able to see it anyway. And then for a little added texture in the background, which again, you don't see super well in the final design of the card, but I just like texture. So I do kind of like to add it in. I did splash on just a little bit of water, and then I kind of just blotted it up with a paper towel so that I could lift the color off and give it some added interest and texture. And then I did trim off like a very, very small amount of this watercolor cardstock just to make it easier to add the shaker element, because this is going to be the full front of an A2 sized card. I just find that leaves a little bit of room for the plastic to still stay that A2 size. I think I took off a little bit too much on one edge, but it worked out fine, so it doesn't really matter. And then I'm just trimming down a piece of plastic that I'm going to use to create my shaker panel. There's no right or wrong way to do this. You can have a slightly bigger piece if you want. This is just how I've kind of started doing it. There are also pouches you can buy that are pre-made, so you don't have to do your own. I generally like to just create my own because I find that works best for me, but honestly, it's whatever works for you. And then we're going to use some double-sided adhesive for this. I find my scor-tape to be the best way to adhere this. Liquid glue, because it shifts, is not a great way to do this, just because it likes to shift and the plastic moves. And then I'm not guaranteed that the shaker bits are going to actually stay inside the card. So I do tend towards a double-sided adhesive just because I find it easier. And I like to layer mine on top. So I do kind of end up doing like the bottom first, and then I'll do the sides kind of at the same time, like laying down the adhesive. This just lets me overlap my adhesive on top of the plastic, which then I'm less likely to have little pockets of air or little pockets where the glittery pieces can get out. So after kind of a trial and error, this has just been the easiest way for me to make sure that everything stays in where I need it to. And I do like to make sure that it's kind of tight around my card, just because, again, I don't like to have huge chunks of plastic sitting out the side. Because honestly, I accidentally cut one once, and then I had to do a whole bunch of surgery to try to kind of fix it because all the shaking pieces fell out. So I do kind of like to do mine fairly tight just so I don't have to worry about that. And I'm always very careful when I'm cutting near the plastic shaker piece, just because I have learned from my mistakes. So then I am going to add the adhesive to the top of the shaker window, just because I'd like to have it there for after we've put everything in. And I chose to use mica flakes and rock candy glitter, mostly because it's not... I find that these have the least amount of static of the glitters that I've worked with. And I just have my little Nuvo scoop, and I kind of just scoop some in, shake it around, see how I feel, and add more if I feel it needs it. And the background, of course, at this point is completely dry. Otherwise, your glitter would just stick in wet areas. So do make sure your panel's dry before you actually adhere anything to it. But me blotting off that water earlier, helped lift any color that wasn't completely dry between the layers and the heat setting. So it kind of was you're pretty guaranteed that it was dry at this point. And then I just keep adding as I feel it's necessary. I mean, I've had these jars now. Well, I mean, the Mica Flakes is a new jar because it got the new lid. But other than that, I mean, I've had these jars for a while and I go through so little of it that I'm not worried about scooping a bunch into my shaker cards. I like to have a full shaker card because I love the sound when it's full. So here I can shake it for you on the microphone. So hopefully you guys can hear that. Like, I like to have a fair amount of pieces in my shaker card because it just gives it that really good shake sound. So I don't like to be chintzy, but of course it's totally up to you and what you can do with your supplies. There's no wrong way to add stuff. You can add different things, sequins, that kind of stuff. I tend to stick with flatter things when I do a flat shaker card just because sequins can get stuck and then they don't want to move around. So keep that in mind, but you can of course add anything that makes your heart happy. So whatever works for you. And then when I go to adhere this to the base, I do have a preference of adding the scor-tape along the plastic edges again, because I do have a thing where it takes a while for glue to stick to plastic. So this is just kind of easier for me. So I did go around the edges, and this is a 1/4 inch scor-tape, just so you know. I did go around the edges with my scor-tape, and then I am going to bring in just a little bit of that Nuvo Deluxe glue into the center so that everything is adhered really well. You don't have to. This is like kind of an extra step, but you guys know if you've been with me for a minute, there's nothing worse, in my opinion, than working really hard on a card, sending it to a person and having it fall apart because you didn't want to use very much glue. So I can be a bit heavy-handed when I use glue, but honestly, I would rather be a little bit heavy-handed with my glue than have my card fall apart when it got to where it was going. So this is kind of my trade-off for that, because I have received cards, and though they're stunning and I love them, and I just glued them back together, it wasn't a big deal, but you know, like, not everybody can just glue them back together. So I just preemptively make sure that they can't fall apart, because that's just kind of my thing, but totally up to you. And then to go on top of the shaker window, because you guys know that we have to have some kind of something fun going on, I do have the Tim Holtz Paper Snowflakes Mini. These are a die set that have, I think there's like 9 different snowflakes. There might be 10 different snowflakes in the set. And it's one that I reach for a lot because I love snowflakes. I collect snowflake dies. They're like my favorite thing ever, just because they're so versatile. And I think that they're really fitting because they don't have to be Christmas themed. Though obviously this is a Christmas card because we are doing Christmas in July, but I don't feel like snowflakes have to be Christmas themed. They can be just winter themed, or, you know, I think that there's a lot of different ways to use them. So I do have a tendency to really love snowflake dies. But yeah, so I cut this one out and thought that I would kind of use that in this kind of upper center area of this card, but in the end I decided I wanted to have a few more snowflakes to kind of go with it. So you can see here, I'm like, I'm gonna put this here, and then I was like, I'm gonna add 4 more. So now there's 5 snowflakes, because you guys know that I like uneven numbers as a general rule. And the glitter cardstock is actually a Tim Holtz cardstock as well. It is the Sparkle Classics, and it's printed on, so nothing flakes off. So it's really neat. So here you can kind of see like it's craft on the bottom, and then it's this beautiful sparkle on the top, but it doesn't flake and it doesn't shift and it doesn't do anything. Like it's really interesting technology. I don't know how you can print this kind of sparkle, but it is stunning. The only thing with that is that it does mean that it has a bit of a coating on the top, so it takes a little bit more effort to get the pieces to let go. But honestly, I find that with pretty much all glitter cardstocks, so this wasn't really a surprise to me. And I did just use my Sidekick because these snowflakes are fairly small, so I just cut down a piece of that cardstock to size, and then I was easily able to run it through my Sizzix Sidekick several times. I love this little die cutting machine. It's perfect when you have just small dies or a bunch of like repetition for dies. I think that it's a great way to just cut out your dies fairly quickly because it's so small and easy to use. And then I did use my craft pick to just poke out all of the snowflakes gently from this piece of cardstock, and then I did have to, of course, separate the little areas because a lot of them have some fun detailing in them. I think the little one, the one I have right here, has like little triangles that pop out, and they came out really easily. It's a coated cardstock, so I just had to actually poke them with my poking tool instead of them just falling out on their own. But I think that it came out really well, and they all looked really pretty. So I love snowflakes. I don't know. I can't go wrong. And I love this snowflake set so much that I actually used it on the card for the next video as well. I work like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I have videos Thursday and Monday. So of course I've already made the card for Monday. And because this snowflake set was already out on my desk, I've reused it in a completely different manner. I mean, the same way because they're dies, but the card is a completely different design. And I think they turned out really pretty. And then for my sentiment, I brought out the Joy to You and Yours stamp set from Simon Says Stamp again because I'm really in love with these fonts. I think that they're really pretty. So I used it to stamp out this sentiment, and I'm going to heat emboss it in sterling embossing powder. So it's another silver. So I have all of my details are silver in this card. I generally lean towards gold, and I did for the next card, but I really wanted to bust out some silver because silver is really pretty and it looks great with some colors as well, and I thought this would be really fitting. So there are matching dies for this stamp set. I don't own them. I don't really care about fussy cutting. I brought out my shears and cut as closely as I could to the line that's going around the sentiment. And then I just bring in my mini snips, and I'm going to kind of cut out those really cool edges of this little ticket design. But there are matching dies if that's something you don't want to do. I don't own them. And I find this to be fairly simple because I do tend to leave a little white border around them. I like that look. If you don't, you could cut closer to the edge. But I like the white border, so I tend to leave it when I cut things out. And I mean, there are other ways you could have done this too. I mean, if you don't enjoy, vellum would have been kind of interesting. Vellum snowflakes on this would have been interesting. I'm sure I'll bust out my vellum pretty soon, but I have not yet. But yeah, so I did ponder popping up my sentiment, but in the end, I did actually just adhere everything flat on top of my shaker card so that there was an added dimension because the flat shaker card already has a fair amount of dimension because of the plastic behind it. So I chose not to add more dimension, though you could if you really wanted to. And I'm just going to adhere everything flat. And because I do find that there's a little bit of issue kind of getting the glue to stick nicely to the plastic, it kind of likes to shift. I just put some acrylic blocks on top of the snowflakes after I had laid them down where I wanted them. And I do pounce off the extra glue so that it doesn't just kind of come out and like ooze out around the edges of the snowflakes, just so that they are kind of cleaner. You don't need to do that. It's not a big deal. The glue dries matte, so you probably wouldn't even notice it really, but it's just kind of a habit when I'm adhering something kind of more delicate, especially to plastic. So just kind of my way of doing things. And then I do have the 5 snowflakes, and I do have one overlapping the sentiment just because I thought that was really pretty. But yeah, so this is kind of a more traditional style Christmas card for me, just because you guys know I don't generally tend towards red and green. They're not a color combo I generally work with, but you can create some beautiful cards with them. So I do try to, throughout this month, I do try to incorporate non-traditional and traditional colors, just so that there are different looks for anybody who wants to recreate anything. And if you ever recreate one of my cards and you want me to see it, make sure to tag me. I love seeing it when you guys recreate my cards. It's so I can't even explain how happy it makes me, because the whole point of my channel is to inspire other people to create things and to give you ideas on how to use your products. You don't have to own the exact same things that I do to create a similar layout or a similar card. So if you're ever creating something inspired by one of my cards, I'd love to see it. So, I mean, I'm on Instagram. I have a Facebook page, I have an email address. Shoot, you can just email it to me if you want me to see it. Like, whatever you want to do, if you feel comfortable sharing with me. But I'm always just really excited when people recreate cards that I've made, just because that's the whole purpose of this, right? Like, I want to inspire you to make your own, because you absolutely can. 100% you can. So I did take those little slivers of extra cardstock that I cut off, and I'm just going to adhere them on the inside of the card base, just for a little bit of extra color on the inside. You don't have to do this. I just thought it'd be fun, because why waste them when I can just add them on the inside? And then this card is completely done. I did add some gems you guys saw there, because why not add more sparkle to a very sparkly card? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So yeah, so that is the the card I've created for you guys. I'm going to shake it here so you can hear all that lovely noise as it shakes around. And yeah, so I'd love to hear what you guys think of this card. If you enjoyed it, leave me a like, leave me a comment, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. I do new videos every Monday and Thursday, and all of July will be Christmas cards. So thank you so much, guys, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.